That might be my favorite win of the year for so many reasons. Tigers win yet again. We're going to talk about it today on Locked On Tigers.
You are Locked On Tigers, your daily Detroit Tigers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of Locked On Tigers. I'm, of course, your host, Scott Bentley. Today is Tuesday, May 9th, 2023. Thank you so much for making Locked On Tigers your first listen. Every single day, we are free and available wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by eBay Motors. A championship team is about each player being a perfect fit. It's the same with your vehicle. So for parts that fit, head to eBay Motors and look for that green check. Stay in the game with eBay Guaranteed Fit. ebaymotors.com. Let's ride. eBay Guaranteed Fit is only available to U.S. customers. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. All righty. We are back. Happy Tuesday, everybody. Happy flippin' Tuesday. The Detroit Tigers win a ball game in Cleveland against the Guardians by a final score of 6-2. This might be my favorite win of the year. It might be. I don't really enjoy losses, so probably it's just safe to say it might be my favorite game of the season so far for the Detroit Tigers. Not only a great offensive performance for so many reasons, still room to improve. Not a perfect game, but it's impossible really to have a perfect game in baseball because there's no clock. Well, there kind of is a clock now. I guess that analogy is no longer a thing, but the game has to end eventually, right? Like you can't, in theory, you can shoot 100% from the field in basketball over the course of a game. It'll never happen, but like in theory, it's possible. In baseball, outs will be recorded eventually. I guess if they didn't, the game would just go on forever. I don't know what I'm saying right now. My point is there is still areas to improve. We will talk about those areas to improve. But the Detroit Tigers were really, really solid offensively. I really enjoyed watching Joey Wentz pitch. I loved the managerial decisions in this game. And they got punched in the mouth and turned around and won a ball game. And didn't let one loss and one terrible inning become 3, 4, 5 straight losses against a division opponent that over the last 4 years has dominated you. Just a great game, a great day of baseball for the Detroit Tigers. Okay, let's start with the offense then. Why not? So offensively, this team had 13 hits and 6 walks. Also, the 6 walks, no one had 2. So 6 different players drew a walk. That's 2/3 of your lineup drew a walk in this ball game. Every single player got on base at least once. A heavy amount got on base more than once. We've been talking about it since the first week or so of the season, but the approaches this season are just night and day, so much better. And I'm not saying that the results have come and gone throughout the year already. We're only a month in. We've had hot stretches. We've had cold stretches. So like the execution of that, I've made that analogy a billion times already this season, is something that it could still be more improved for sure, right? But the approaches just are so much better. You're having a lot more pitches thrown per at bat. There's far less just completely like 6, 7, 8, 9 pitch innings that are just completely uncompetitive ball with 0 threats offensively. There's a lot more deep counts. There's a lot more making the opposing starters work a lot more. Just really, really nice to see. And again, that doesn't mean that every single game that they're going out there and look like the 84 Tigers or the 2013 Tigers. Like, I'm not trying to sell you that, but I think when comparing it to at least like, hey, have we gotten better than last year? Last year was one of the worst offenses I've ever seen in my entire life. This year, a month into the season now, I think it's pretty clear that they have at least taken somewhat of a step forward as they play more and more games. We'll see how much of a step forward that ends up being. Okay, but for the time being, they're winning a lot of ball games. The offense has really been clicking over the last 5, 6, 7 ball games. So we'll gladly take it. Okay. Individually in this one, let's start with who do you want to start with? I guess we can start with Riley Green. More lifting the ball to the pull side. Makes me very happy. Had a hit in this one to the pull side. Also had a deep fly out to the pull side that I thought was a home run off the bat. Just a little bit under it, which I'm giddy that he's under a ball to the pull side. Like it was a can of corn. Like it was not a can of corn. It was a little bit deeper than that. It was just inside the warning track to right field though. I was like, oh my goodness, he got under a baseball to the pull side. It's the most excited I've ever been for a fly out, I think, in my entire life. Offensively at least. Just nice to see. He's clearly made some adjustments. He's hitting the ball really hard. His single in this game was like 105 miles an hour off the bat. And he has been on fire lately. Like we were talking about how the numbers were going down and down and down and down since the start of the season. The last week, he has been on an absolute tear. And his OPS is now around 700 on the season, when at one point it was like below 650 and really dipping lower and lower and lower as every game went along. So glad to see him. He is clearly feeling it. Hopefully it's just a coming out party and it's just who he is from here on out. We don't have to worry about the ebbs and flows of like him just starting to hit ground balls at a 60% clip again. Hopefully that we can start putting that behind us. Still, I'm not saying it's just like over like that. He still has plenty more to adjust to and whatnot at the major league level. Forever adjusting, this game is, but great to see. Great to see. Nick Maton. Let's talk about him. Got on base twice in this one. I feel like I just said pace. Got on base twice in this one. 1 hit and 1 walk. I will say, I did love a lot of the managerial decisions in this ballgame. I think maybe someday he can return to the 4 spot. I think I'm kind of over him in the 4 spot right now in the lineup. Need more production, brother. I love the dude, and I think, over the last 3 or 4 games, he's actually the hit total has gone up. He's gotten some hits on some non-fastballs as well at that. So hopefully this is a trend and a sign of things to come. But he still has a lot of work to do to kind of prove that he can. For me, it's literally just hit non-fastballs. That's all. I love that he works counts. I love it. It makes me so happy. He had like a 10-pitch AB in this one. He works a ton of counts, but need to be actually do something with those at-bats that you work counts in. And so I think maybe a knockdown to like 6th in the lineup might not hurt anybody, himself included. But again, double in this game, walk in this game. Solid day at the office for Nick Maton, all things considered. Let's get into the 2 biggest offensive performances in this game pretty comfortably. I want to talk about Javi too. Okay, talk about a few more guys offensively right after I tell y'all about our friends over at So Rare. So Rare is a revolutionary fantasy baseball game and marketplace, transforming fans into owners with officially licensed digital cards featuring players from across all 30 teams. Unlike other fantasy baseball platforms, So Rare managers truly own their fantasy experience. You can collect, buy, sell, and compete with player cards against global competition and opponents to win epic rewards. Win or lose, you still own your cards, and there's no cost to play. The more you win, the more you advance. You can get more powerful cards and get next-level competition. It's awesome. They're also partnered with like Juan Soto and Julio Rodriguez, which is super cool. We see the ads on TV and whatnot with them. Very, very cool. Absolutely fascinating thing that I was totally ignorant to and did not understand prior to them sponsoring the show. And now that we're partnered with them, it's something that I'm really hooked on and really enjoy doing. It's a lot of fun. So be sure to check it out. Again, revolutionary. Like you really do, like you are an owner, like by definition of the word, kind of. So very cool. Head to sorare.com/locked-on. That's spelled SORARE.com to draft your team of free player cards, set your lineup, and start competing to win epic rewards today. Again, that's sorare.com/locked-on to start playing today. Out of water. Great. What's up, everybody? Welcome back. Segment 2 here, Locked On Tigers. Thank you for making us your first listen every single day. Shout out to the everydayers that do tune in every single day. We will be back tomorrow, as always, recapping a potential series victory over the Cleveland Guardians. I'm not going to get too ahead of myself. We got Erod going in game 3. We'll talk about that at the end, too. So winning game 1 just sets you up so beautifully. Very pumped. But we will talk about game 2 tomorrow, obviously. Okay, so talking about some of the standouts on offense, Javi Baez, he went 1 for 5 in this game. He has this stat was pointed out by Cody Stavenhagen of The Athletic. He has 15 RBIs in his last 20 games. I'm not a huge use RBI as a stat to grade or judge how great a player is, but that is a staggering number. Like you're approaching an RBI a day for over a 20-game stretch. That is a crazy impressive number. But the most impressive thing to me was, well, he did strike out in this game. But the stat that I'm about to give you is what makes this so impressive. This game was on May 8th. That was Javi Baez's first strikeout since April 30th. You heard me correctly. Javi Baez went over a week without a single strikeout. Not 7 plate appearances. Not 7 at-bats, whatever. 8 days. A doubleheader thrown in there at one point. Very impressive. His strikeout percentage on the year is low enough to put him in the 82nd percentile before the game started. So he had a K in this one. Maybe it changes a little bit, but he'll be around the 80th percentile in all of baseball in K rate. Top 20% in the league in lowest strikeout rate, Javi Baez. Now, I'm not here to tell you that he's completely changed the type of hitter he is overnight and that he's going to end the season in the 80th percentile or anything like that. I'm sure that he will still have his moments and still his chase rate is still relatively high, pretty high, honestly, not even relatively. But this is a great sign, objectively. We're over a month into the season. This is not a 1 week, 1 series sample. Even the bad part at the beginning of the year, that's included into this. And he has an OPS over 900 since getting benched, which also we're approaching a month removed from that. He's been on an absolute tear, and it's great to see, for sure. The two biggest, I don't want to say like MVPs of the game, but yeah, the two loudest contributors offensively in this ball game were Eric Haas and Andy Ibanez. We'll talk about Ibanez here in a second. Eric Haas has been also on an absolute tear lately. He's almost hitting 300 on the season as an OPS over 760. Undeniably has been one of the most valuable players on the team so far this season, honestly, and especially during this winning stretch. We talked about it a little bit yesterday, how just like sneaky valuable he is in so many areas. Gives you good speed on the base pass, which most people kind of look over. It is a legitimate like sneaky power threat. When he's hot, can hit the baseball to all parts of the field. Again, like 297 or whatever batting average right now on the season. When he's right, he can be a massive, massive plus to this team. He's already almost worth half a WAR on FanGraphs. Usually over the course of a season, he sits somewhere in like the 1 to 1.5 WAR range. So seeing him already at half a win is a great sign. Just really, really crushing the ball. And while Jake Rogers is the best catcher on this team, the fact that we have a good problem to have and that we want both of them in the lineup on a nightly basis is beautiful. It's fantastic. And we talked about that back in the spring. Like I said that I thought Rogers was going to surprise people and probably end up starting more games behind the dish than Haas, but Haas is still going to play in probably over 100 games. Not even probably, definitely well over 100 games. Probably over 120 games this year because they're just going to find other ways to utilize him in the lineup. Whether that's left field, designated hitter, doesn't matter. That's a great problem to have. Eric Haas, so valuable to this team's success so far this season. Wanted to give him his flowers there. Andy Ibanez had a fantastic game. He's been crushing the ball since his 0-10 start. He has been on an absolute tear. He's a free swinger for sure, and that's probably not going to change. He's 30. And he swings hard as well, but he also doesn't swing and miss a whole lot. Like we talked about that when we brought him in, right? When Scott Harris brought him in over the offseason, we talked about how he had a high contact rate on balls in the strike zone. So I'm sure that at some point he's going to get pitched differently. But for the time being, we're going to gladly take this hot streak. And he's been on a tear. And he's been looks pretty solid out in the field. We're just going to keep riding it. Had a home run in this game, had a walk in this game as well. I don't expect him to walk too terribly much. But players that do well like that are going to put pressure on some of the soon-to-be, if not already, fringe roster players such as Jonathan Scope and the like. So, Andy Ibanez, fantastic game. Let's get into what do we want to talk? Well, let's just wrap up the offense. 5 for 14 with runners in scoring position, still well over 300. I know it's frustrating, quantity, right? Like it's frustrating to still fail 9 times with runners in scoring position. I think they left 9 men on base total as a team in this game. But we'll gladly take it. That 5 for 14 is still a batting average well over 300 with runners in scoring position. That puts you at the top of baseball. Another game with a home run as well. Just a beautiful sight. Okay. Let's talk pitching. Let's talk starting pitching. First, Joey Wentz gets the nod in this one. 5 2/3, 3 hits, 2 runs, 3 walks, and 5 strikeouts. J-Ram had a home run in this ball game. I have a thing whenever we play Cleveland where I like there to be a 2-run buffer between us and them in the scorecard at any given moment because I'm terrified of J-Ram. I'm horrified of him. Jose Ramirez has tortured this fan base for the better part of a decade, and he scares me so much that like I would almost debate giving him Barry Bonds treatment and intentionally walking him with no one on. Now, like obviously that's a slight exaggeration. I wouldn't do that, but like all good jokes contain like a little bit of truth, right? Like it's in the back of your head. Pretty much every time he steps in the batter's box, you're like, oh, this isn't going to go well. So I like to have, I don't just like to be up, 2-1, 3-1. Well, J-Ram could tie that with nobody on base anytime he wants to. So I'd like at least a 2-run buffer, please. I call that the J-Ram buffer. But all in all, Joey Wentz looked really, really solid on this one. We'll get into his performance as a whole right after this. Forgot I'm out of water. Okay, welcome back. Third and final segment here, Locked On Tigers. So Joey Wentz in this one, we read his stat line there before the break. Only 7 whiffs, which is not an extreme amount, not a super high number. 27% CSW percentage, called strikes plus whiffs percentage. Not anything super, super high. But what he did do really well in this game was get weak contact. And we talk about, like, if you want
just clinic on how to induce weak contact, watch any of Eduardo Rodriguez's last 5 starts. That is like peak efficient and productive and effective weak contact pitcher baseball. But Joey Wentz was really good in this one in that sense. Only an 86 mile an hour average exit velocity over the course of the entire outing. Pretty solid. That's not bad at all. And the cutter specifically, which we talk about all the time, was a pitch that he developed in the minors after coming back from Tommy John, and has really kind of progressed his development in this organization so much and looked so good in September of last year when he was dealing at the major league level. So the cutter in this one had like a 79 mile an hour. I almost said percent. Mile an hour average exit velocity. So really, really effective pitch in this one. And yeah, there was some command issues to iron out for sure. I mean, 3 walks is not where you want to be. The best start of his career, I think, to this point, is that outing against the Giants where he gave up a solo homer and then just dominated the rest of the entire outing. And on top of that, was up 0-1 pretty much on every hitter the rest of the ball game. So I that's like peak Joey Wentz to me, is like when he's on, he can fill the strike zone without throwing it over the heart of the plate. And the biggest reason for that is the cutter, right? That's what cutters are for. They're for missing barrels, inducing weak contact, and they're for, oh, this is a fastball in. Oh, there you go. It nicked the corner, low and in. It's a strike now. So his ability when he's really, really on command wise, I have a lot. I really like Joey Wentz a lot. I know the ERA is like 6 or whatever, but it's kind of like 4 really good starts. Well, I shouldn't say really good. 4 solid starts, 4 not solid starts, or 4 bad starts. And so it's kind of just like cut right in half. It's not like a consistent thing. It's which version of him are you getting on any given day? And in this one, we got a pretty good one. I also like the curveball today. I thought it was sequenced really well. We haven't seen it too terribly much this year. Very good shape. I think it was the sharpest the curveball has looked all season. I kind of even wanted to see it a little bit more. He only threw it, like I said, 8 times, but it was sequenced really, really well. Like I love when pitchers go up in the zone with heat, and then here's a curveball that falls off the table and is a ball low, but you want to swing through it. I think that's. I know it's like old school, but it has worked for 100 years for a reason. So I really liked that, and he got a swing and a miss on it as well using that sequencing. So yeah, all in all, pretty solid start from Joey Wentz. I mean, like I said, there really isn't like it's not like he's consistently giving up 4 runs an outing. Like he has 3 or 4 starts where he's given up like 3 or less, and then he's had a handful of starts, 3 or 4 starts where he's given up 4, 5, 6 runs. So it just needs some consistency. I did, again, as part of my this is one of my favorite games of the year. He started off in the first inning with 2 base runners on. Like he had thrown 3 pitches and there were 2 base runners on. And he gets a double play from J-Ram, by the way. Grounds into a double play. Tigers are down 1-0, then gets another out. Then proceed from like the 2nd through the 5th, through the 4th. He went on a stretch there where he got out like 16 of 17 batters in a row or something at one point in the middle of the outing. And then again in the 6th, kind of the pitch count got high, ended with over 90 pitches thrown. And he got pulled and whatever. And we'll get to the bullpen in a second, and allowed some more base runners there in his final inning. But we've talked about a lot how one of the biggest things he has to overcome is just he will have a tendency to let a snowball become an avalanche, right? And it just the snowball effect has really been a thing this year. And in this one, he got punched in the mouth early and recovered so nicely and never wavered his confidence and put together a fantastic outing. I thought he looked stellar. So shout out to Joey Wentz. Great start. Bullpen. Will Vest goes 2/3 of an inning, 1 hit, no runs or walks, 1 K. This is my formal apology. I had been... Look, confidence is key, and his stuff looks great. In the first half of last year, Will Vest was awesome. And then in the second half, it was kind of hit or miss, but like he was still pretty solid. And then by like the very end of the season, kind of was letting up a little bit. And at one point in the second half of the season, got optioned. And then this year, spring training was brutal. He goes to Toledo, and his Toledo numbers are brutal. Then he gets called up. I come on air and say, I don't think that would not have been my first choice. And he is literally a 0 ERA. He has not given up a run yet. He keeps not only, and it's not like low leverage either. Like he's going out there and getting huge outs in today's game. That was a very, very key situation to be put in. Like you're inheriting runners in a close ball game. And went out there and shoved, man. Will Vest deserves a ton of credit for the resurgence that he has had this season. The stuff was never the problem, even when he was struggling. He has always had electric stuff. It's just about consistently putting it in the strike zone, and he has certainly done that so far this season. So shout out to Will Vest. Jason Foley, this is one of the managerial decisions I loved. You had first and second, one out, and I literally out loud went, all right, bring in the automatic ground ball because like that's, it's a close ball game. I want a double play to get out of the inning, and that's what Hinch did. Now, that's not what happened. They got a little fly out to get the second out and then eventually got out of the inning. But Jason Foley continues to do his job as like a 1.3 something ERA. He's the man. He is the man. I love Jason Foley, but I really like the decision to go to him there, even though it wasn't like the 8th or 9th inning. I think it was the 7th. But in what situation do I need a ground ball the most over the course of 9 innings? That's when I want Jason Foley on the mound. And that's what they did in this ball game, even if it didn't come to fruition. Chasen Shreve, 1 2/3, 2 hits, no runs or walks, 2 Ks. Really, really nice performance. He's had a couple of pretty solid performances in a row. I know early in the season, he started off good and then went through a week where he was just in heck or like 10 days and was just seemed to be giving up a ton of runs. The Baltimore series obviously did him no favors. And then now seems to be kind of recovering rather nicely. So nice to see there. That splitter, I say it every time, that splitter will play. Alex Lang closes the door, does allow a base runner, walks Miles Straw there, but no damage done. Tigers win. He closes the door. I did want to talk about the managerial decisions, which is where we'll talk about Lang a little bit more. So first off, pinch running for Miguel Cabrera, never a bad idea to me. They did, pinch ran Jake Rogers for him, even though kind of a weird like hit and run, and Jake didn't look at the ball and just like, I respect it, whatever. You got, you trying to get something working on the base pass and whatnot. But yeah, pinch running for Miguel, never a problem to me. Alex Lang, okay. 1 out, right? He recorded literally 1 out in this ball game. I loved it. I absolutely loved it. And the reason why Hinch touched on it a little bit at the end of the game, but if you're looking at where Cleveland was in the lineup, I completely understand and agree with the decision. You don't want Cleveland to get back into it, obviously. And even though there's 2 outs, the last thing you wanted was the top of the lineup. Steven Kwan is one of the toughest at-bats in the entire game of baseball. He does not swing and miss, like ever. He doesn't whiff. So, like, that's a terrifying person to see in the batter's box. Obviously, Rosario, and then I don't even need to tell y'all about how terrifying it would be to get it back to J-Ram with him being the tying or go-ahead run. So I love just saying, you know what? We're going to just stomp this fire out. We're not going to give them any chance to get back into this ball game. The 9-hitter is up. We don't want the lineup to turn over. Let's throw our best reliever out there and have him get the job done. Now, again, he did walk Straw. So execution, not fantastic. But still then got Kwan out immediately after and no damage done. So I love that. As far as like he threw 8 pitches, you don't want to use him in a full run ball game necessarily. I hear you. I will say the Tigers have 3 off days in the next 10 days. They have an off day on Thursday. They have another off day on Monday, and then they have another off day next Thursday. So if there was ever a time to go to a pitcher for 1 out It would be when you're about to, after this series, you will have 3 off days in 1 week. So I'm pretty okay with it. And honestly, I loved it. Yeah, I mean that's really all I got. Like last year's team, the reason why this was such a great win for me is last year's team turns that awful Sunday performance and that dreadful 6th inning specifically into a losing streak. They absolutely do. And this team came right back and not only won, but they came back from another deficit. They were down 1-0 in the 2nd inning. I mean, bottom of the first, but by the time they took their at-bats in the 2nd inning, they were already losing. Top of the 3rd, they score 3 runs. Don't let up the lead the rest of the ball game. I thought this was a very, very impressive win over a really solid team. I know the Guardians' offense has been dreadful. I know, but scoring 6 runs against any Cleveland pitcher or any bullpen or in their staff whatsoever is a massive win in my book, especially for a team like the Tigers who have been struggling offensively for 6 years, but really the better part of the last calendar year. Tigers are now 28th in baseball in runs scored. A week ago, they were in last by almost 10 runs. Now they're 28th. Steady climbing. They actually passed Cleveland, oddly enough. So there you go. But take advantage. Take advantage. Keep winning ball games. I said it yesterday. I'll say it again. I don't care how good or bad the opponent we are playing is, because we have been the team that gets stomped for 7 years now. We've been the get right game for every team in baseball, for 29 other teams, for over half a decade. Not necessarily the worst, but all the other 29 teams in baseball look at you and go, okay, some winnable games coming up at least. So I'll gladly take a win. I don't care how much Cleveland's struggling. I don't care how much St. Louis is struggling. I don't care how much the Mets are struggling. They're struggling because we beat them. That's why people are saying they're struggling, because the Detroit Tigers beat them. Standings watch, we are, I think, 2.5 games out of first place. There you go. 2.5 games out of first place in the Central. 7-3 in our last 10. Other teams in the division: Cleveland 4-6, Chicago 5-5, Kansas City 4-6, Minnesota 5-5. Hottest team in the division, right within reach. 2 more games against the team that you're right next to in the division. Also, you are now 16-18. You are 2 games under 500 with 2 games against Cleveland left. Another thing I pointed out earlier, Eduardo Rodriguez getting the finale in this one. Winning game 1, knowing that Erod is pitching one of the next 2 days, is a beautiful, beautiful thing. Okay? Let's go win another ball game. Thank you for making Locked On Tigers your first listen every single day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube. Shout out to the everydayers that do tune in every day. We'll be back tomorrow recapping game 2 of the Cleveland Guardians series. Yeah, I'll catch you all then, baby. Peace and love. Going to therapy's dope. Let's keep winning ball games. Go Tigers, baby.